miss from downtown. Just keep feeding Chris Goulding.
Well, and it's just a great play again. Chris Goulding really ran over the top of that screen to the keyway and then came back the other way. It's all happening now. Oh!
And this has got wild in the Philippines. Out of control in the Philippines. Punches, kicks, fans, the bench is cleared.
You are kidding me.
This is out of control. This could well see the game abandoned.
We obviously can't see, but there's an Aussie on the ground there.
Well, these are sad, disgraceful, deplorable, abhorrent scenes in the Philippines. Nathan Sobey has been assaulted.
Are you kidding me? And again, we couldn't get a camera angle, but there must have been 15 or 20 Filipino players around Nathan Sobey and Chris Goulding. You saw Luke Longley run from one end of the court to be able to stick up for his teammates. This is disgraceful.
Shane, I have never seen anything like this in all my years covering professional sport involving Australian teams.
Well, you've got to go back to that timeout from the Filipino coach and the emotion and the way he challenged his players. And you've seen there's been a bit of niggle all the way along. There was an unsportsmanlike foul on Chris Goulding that started this. It was nothing but a cheap and disgraceful play against the Aussies. They'll get serious penalties for this. This is really bad. I've never seen anything like it, let alone in an international tournament.
Can the game continue?
Well, I'm not sure what happens from here. You know, but you look at Chris Goulding there. You know, you look at some of the players and what they've copped and the amount of punches and kicks and the mindset that this Filipino team attacked the Australians with is disgraceful.
You raised a very good point. We took the time out from the Philippines where the coach urged his side to hit the Australians. I didn't actually think he meant it.
Well, and that's where it started. Just on that offensive foul here from Chris Goulding. Cheap play from Kickett, who's come in from the sideline after this as well. And that's cheap from the Filipino to start with. Kickett's come in and stuck up for his teammates, and I mean, Blatt should be fine for throwing such a soft punch anyway. But have a look at these flying punches and kicks that come from the Filipinos. Never seen anything like it, particularly in a world event. What I'm worried about is on the other side, back over there where we saw Sobey. Right here, look at this.
Unbelievable, Shane. Sickening.
The chair's thrown. And look how many players are on top of those Australians.
So, uncalled for response from Daniel Kickett, but that was after it was instigated by the contact by the Filipinos on Chris Goulding. And then that's actually a punch that followed a punch from Andre Blatch. And then there are what you could only just be described as coward attacks on people looking a different way. There are elbows and fists to the head. You know, Thon Maker is out of line for flying through the air with feet first. But look at that. From Romeo, a punch to the back of the head of a man not even looking at him.
Well, we've seen that happen on multiple occasions of guys coming in and punching the Aussies in the back of the head. But what's going on the floor there with so many players on the Australians while they were on the ground, chairs being thrown.
Sadly, this will make news around the world.
Yeah, no doubt. And when you see somebody like Thon Maker involved in this,
leaving the crowd and the officials to move on. There's the contact on Chris Goulding initially. And it's that contact to which Daniel Kickett reacts with a bad elbow to the head. And that makes contact with Roger Pogoy, and then, quite simply, all hell breaks loose.
Well, and that elbow from Kickett, you know, no doubt, you know, I think that was cheap. And I think, you know, he could be suspended for that game on that elbow, for that action. But what transpired from the rest of this Filipino team, you just can't excuse. And Chris Goulding, there's no doubt, exaggerates, expecting this contact in the second one. But again, this is a cheap act to start with as well.
So Roger Pogoy just chesting Goulding. You can see the intent, the determination. And then that's the contact from Daniel Kickett, which, it must be said, is more significant than the original contact, Pogoy on Goulding. And because it's a raised elbow to the neck/head.
Well, and that was cheap. And, you know, we've said the way it is about these Filipino players that have come in and hit players in the back of the head and from behind, and the kicks and everything else. But the play that Kickett made, no doubt, was a cheap shot to the head of a Filipino player that certainly wasn't ready for it either.
That's a very good point.
But that certainly does not make an excuse. Have a look at that cheap shot running in from the background and punching Thon Maker in the back of the head. And if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, the last thing you want to see is your first-round draft pick involved in anything like this.
You've got two current NBA players out there in Matthew Dellavedova and Thon Maker. Former NBA 500 gamer Andre Blatch, prominent as well. And while all this was unfolding, perhaps the worst images were of Nathan Sobey pinned underneath a chair with objects being hurled at him, and multiple Filipino officials or players and accompanying authorities attacking him.
Yeah, and Chris Goulding, I think, was on the ground right next to him. But, you know, all of those players came off the bench. I mean, in basketball, you're not allowed to come off the bench to be able to jump into anything. They had players come off the bench and throwing haymakers into the back of the Australian's head.
While Calvin Abueva was grinning broadly, Matthew Dellavedova has the expression I would suggest is most pertinent right now, expressionless.
And I think that's how every player and official should feel right now if they have, you know, their heart for the game. Because it's just not what you want to see in international basketball. When you're putting on your country's colours, it's just not a good look.
79-48, Australia by 31 points before a wild eruption. An uncontrolled brawl.
This game can't go on, Matty. What are they looking at the replays for?
I can only assume they are going to try and apportion fouls and then continue with the contest.
Oh,
but
cut it out. This has got to finish.
I agree.
I just don't think
that straight away. This game can't continue. And these scenes are childish. Am I reading it incorrectly?
No, I agree.
Taking self